This king kept a flea as a pet, raising it until it was as big as a piglet. In the beginning, the flea was very small, just happening to leap onto the king's hand. Finding it cute, the king pricked his finger and fed it with his fresh blood. Seeing the flea greedily sucking the blood, the king revealed a content smile. The king prepared a comfortable little bed for the flea, and from then on, this glass house became the cozy home for the flea. The king also made many small toys for it. In the blink of an eye, the flea grew to the size of a peanut. The king brought back a blood-soaked steak, calling his pet to come eat. As the flea was having his sumptuous lunch, it had already grown to the size of a piglet. The king, full of affection, caressed it, treating it like his own son. One day, the flea fell ill. The king urgently summoned his personal physician in the middle of the night. The doctor was taken aback upon seeing the flea, as it had already grown to the size of a sheep. After diagnosis, the doctor said it was beyond saving, advising the king to make preparations. The king was inconsolable. He couldn't bear to part with this well-behaved pet. Before the doctor left, the king warned him not to tell anyone about this, or else he would kill him. This king had hung a beast's skin in the palace. As long as you could guess what animal it was, you could pass the test and marry the princess. This man pulled off a hair for careful observation and confidently declared it to be pigskin. Apparently, his answer was incorrect, and he was eliminated. Next came a warrior. He sniffed it carefully and gave his answer, but he was also wrong. The princess was glad that he didn't get it right because he was old and ugly. At this point, a handsome knight came forward. The princess liked him very much. She paused the contest and asked the king what the correct answer was. It was the skin of the giant flea. The princess immediately felt disappointed because no one would guess it right. As expected, the knight also failed to guess correctly. At this moment, a rude wild man barged in. The guards tried to stop him, but for fairness, the king let him in. The wild man sniffed the skin and immediately gave the correct answer. The princess was stunned, and the smile on the king's face vanished. He hadn't expected that anyone would get it right. The princess, not wanting to marry the wild man, riled. She went to the rooftop and threatened the king with suicide. The king tried hard to soothe her and finally talked her down. The princess walked out of the castle in tears, where the wild man was waiting to take her away. This wild man is climbing a mountain with a princess on his back. Finally, they reached their home at the peak. One day, the wild man went out hunting, and the princess found a woman. She hastily asked her for help. The next day, the woman came to rescue the princess with her sons. A young man got the princess to the other side of the cliff by walking on a tightrope. Just then, the wild man came out and saw this. He swiftly moved onto the tightrope using his strong arms. Another young man caught the rope with a knife, and the wild man fell from the cliff. The princess successfully escaped the wild man's control, and they took a carriage down the mountain. Suddenly, the wild man appeared from behind. He hadn't fallen to his death. The three men were quickly killed. The youngest son tried to burn the wild man, but not only did he fail to defeat him, he was strangled to death. Subsequently, the mother was also strangled by the wild man. The princess ran away and hid behind a cave, but she was still found by the wild man. The furious wild man wanted to strangle her, but in the end, he couldn't bear to do it and didn't kill her. The princess made peace with the wild man and promised to go back with him. The wild man wanted to carry the princess back home, but the next second, she cut his neck open with a sharp knife. The princess returned to the palace with the wild man's head. The king wept in regret and begged his daughter for forgiveness. To make it up to her, the king abdicated the throne to her. This man stuck his head in the refrigerator and frantically licked the frost from it because he hadn't eaten or drunk for 3 days. Nemo is a thief, but this time, he's trapped in this mansion and can't get out. Since there's no food in the room, he chopped the ornamental fish into meat and rolled it into meatballs and ate it, but the disgusting taste almost made him vomit. Then the intelligence system automatically turned on the heat mode. Nemo felt very hot. He wanted to drink water, but there was no water in the faucet. The water in the fish tank is seawater, so he can't drink it either. Luckily, the automatic watering device in the room started sprinkling the plants with water. He won't have to worry about dying of thirst for a while. The entire mansion is sealed off by an intelligence system. Nemo notices the glass in the ceiling, so he moved every movable table and chair in the house and stacked them under the skylight. Then he gathered ropes and tied them to the furniture to build a high platform. Finally, Nemo made a suggested sunglasses out of glass face pieces so that he wouldn't be blinded by the sun when he removed the skylight. An hour later, Nemo managed to chisel away the sides of the skylight, but he didn't realize there were screws inside. So he cut off the leg of a wooden table and cut a notch in it, intending to use the leg as a wrench. But before he could unscrew the nut, the wooden leg broke. Nemo had no choice but to give up, but sooner or later, the food would run out and he couldn't open the skylight. How can Nemo escape?
The man wraps snake skin around his hand, and he gets superpowers. He could easily dig up gold, and his tears would instantly bloom into flowers. Ferocious beasts became incredibly docile under his touch. However, these powers did not improve his life because they lived in a wasteland. As far as the eye could see, the world was desolate. Their neighbors were a group of towering stone people who were not friendly towards them. In such an environment, no amount of gold could be spent. One night, the man had a dream of a lush green mountain where he hoped more humans might live. So he persuaded one of the stone people to escort them to find that mountain. Soon they reached the foot of the mountain, but only an old man lived there. The old man gave him a seed, saying it would be of great use in the future. That night, the man had another dream of the world being flooded with countless creatures drowning. At that moment, the seed floated before his eyes, shaping into the bow of a ship. The animals underwater came back to life, swimming towards the ship. It was clear he had witnessed a catastrophic disaster, and the seed was the only hope, so he planted the seed overnight. The next day, the seed erupted into a spring with water spreading in all directions. Wherever the water flowed, plants revived. In the blink of an eye, towering trees sprang up, turning the wasteland into a forest. The water flowed out of the forest and further beyond, as if the world was being renewed with life.